I definitely think melee skills are very useful. They're incredibly strong, generally speaking, relative to ranged. Like that you.
Oh my, he's saying melee's better. From the mouth of the man himself, he's saying melee is incredibly strong versus range. He's basically saying only the smart players are going to be playing melee because it's strong. You know what? That's all I needed to hear.
So the monk, the smart class to choose, says Jonathan Rogers himself. Melee is gonna be awesome. And if you took one look at the monk and told yourself, I am playing that class, well, me too, and I've watched every piece of monk gameplay on the internet that I could find. And I'm gonna showcase to you why you want to play the monk. I'll also be adding in some gameplay that you may not have seen yet, because some of this monk gameplay doesn't have a lot of views, but some people posted like full show, like hour-long videos of monk footage. And I have also looked at all of the revealed passive notables we know of and all of the skills that we know of, and I have seen some insane synergies for endgame monk that I will also be pointing out in this video and telling you guys what to look out for. At least these are the skills I'm gonna be looking out for. So let's stop the BS and just start talking about them. So first, let's talk about two of the slam attacks that the monk has, which is Vaulting Impact and Falling Thunder. First up, Vaulting Impact is the leapfrog looking attack, which is more so good for utility. The first being the fast movement across the map, or using it to start an engagement, use it to try to run away from an engagement. Movement tech is cool, but this also builds up stun 30% faster, and it can also consume days to build up 300% stun. Now we also have slam support to actually make this skill very strong, so I actually do think this is one of the monk's best option for stunning. Now, before we show you what the slam support is, let's talk about Falling Thunder, because yes, Falling Thunder is a slam attack. Now, this is the attack where the monk slams down lightning strikes that can wipe out entire groups of mobs. Now, the baseline of the skill starts out pretty weak, but you can severely ramp it up with power charges. On top of that, this looks like the strongest move out of all of the gameplay footage I've seen, in my opinion. I haven't seen the monk do a single more amount of damage in like this in just one attack. And on top of that, I know for a fact that all of the Falling Thunders I've seen didn't have the maximum amount of power charges, as well as the maximum amount that you can boost this skill. So let's talk about how to get power charges. Because number one, pretty much the only like showcase that the endgame reveal showcased with the monk was that he gets power charges via Killing Palm. Now, Killing Palm was the move when the enemy was low, they become marked and you can Killing Palm them. And it's basically a Siphoning Strike. Once they're at really low health, you can basically just one shot, like finish them off with Killing Palm, and you grant a power charge when you do this. However, one thing I found asking was, well, what do you do if you get to a boss fight? And there are some boss fights which aren't spawning mobs all the time. And that's where a other revealed move from some old video is called Siphoning Strike. Now, what Siphoning Strike does is it's an attack that if it hits a shocked enemy, it consumes that shock, so I guess it removes it from the enemy, and it creates a Nova. And also just using this skill and doing this ability grants you a power charge. So in the background here is the monk using Siphoning Strike against a boss. And it's like I said, when the boss isn't spawning any mobs. And then later on in the footage, he will use Falling Thunder. And keep in mind, this is just Falling Thunder early game with one power charge. This is like some early game footage in the background. And the other thing is the monk has two notables in his skill tree that has to do with power charges. So first up from the passive skill tree is Lust for Power. It's a 10% chance that if you would gain a power charge, you instead gain the maximum number of them and +1 to your cap. Next is One with the Storm, which makes it so that quarterstaff skills that consume power charges count as consuming an additional power charge. So just out of these two notable skills that we know of, there might be another way to raise your maximum number of power charges. It would seem that you could at least get like 4 or 5 power charges into moves like Falling Thunder. All right, so now that we got all the power charge stuff out of the way, remember how I mentioned that we were first showing off 2 slam skills? Well, one of the revealed support gems is Fist of War, and this is making a return from Path of Exile 1. Now, what Fist of War does is every slam attack gets ancestrally boosted once every about 6 seconds. Now, not only in Path of Exile 1 did this add a crazy cool animation to your attack, but in the first game, Fist of War made ancestrally boosted attacks deal up to almost 100% more damage and have almost up to 60% increased area of effect. And you can obviously imagine how powerful that can be with Falling Thunder. But if you were trying to make a build where you were maybe not using Falling Thunder and trying to stun enemies, I actually do think that this would be very powerful with Vaulting Impact as well. All right, so the next different kind of playstyle with the monk is that he has a lot of combo-oriented attacks. Now, from what I've seen from the different skill gems and whatnot, is that combo is built up, and if you haven't hit an enemy within the last 5 seconds or 8 seconds, it says it on the different skills, then you don't have a combo anymore. Now, there are specific attacks that basically say you have like a 1, 2, 3 combo, and there are also support gems, which extend combos, and also support gems, which allow you to turn big, powerful strikes into more powerful combo finishers. However, 2 of the monk-specific combo attacks that I think are cool are Tempest Bell and Mantra of Destruction. And Tempest Bell, we already kind of mentioned, it was the cool bell that plops onto the ground after you pull off a 4-hit combo. You can hit Tempest Bell to trigger shockwaves, and elemental attacks create elemental shockwaves. Now, there's probably just a good way to scale this in endgame with the Monk's Ascendancies. I honestly just think this is a cool skill, and I'm gonna be testing out some stuff with it. I don't know how powerful it can be, but I'm keeping an eye on this one because it's super cool. However, the second skill that they revealed recently is Mantra of Destruction. Now, Mantra of Destruction makes it so that after you build up 10 combo, your next attack is a guaranteed critical hit with 90% increased critical damage bonus. Now, this looks like an insane monk ability, which will create some combos for bossing damage. But I do believe that there are some crit synergies where you don't even necessarily need a powerful hit, although the damage always helps, but what you are triggering is the crit. And if there happens to be a really, really spammy fast, like trigger a bunch of combos a bunch of times and trigger as many critical hits as you can to trigger different effects, I just think that there's multiple reasons why Mantra of Destruction is going to be very, very powerful for the monk. Now, the last sort of monk gameplay theme is ice and tons of crowd control. Now, the main ice move I'm looking out for is Wave of Frost. This makes the monk flip backwards while sending a freezing wave of ice to damage areas ahead of you. And from what I've seen of the ice skills and the different gameplay, I would honestly just rather use Cold to Frost because it seems like it'll freeze a bunch of enemies. It'll be really good crowd control and utility. Just like there are abilities that trigger on crit, we have, blessings that trigger on freeze. And we actually have a skill in our skill tree which grants us power charges for shocking frozen enemies. So I'm not, obviously if there's other good freezing skills, I'll probably use those too. But I do think that focusing on ice just for crowd control and then switching over to shock for damage while also granting yourself power charges probably. I'm sure we will find other powerful things you could do with ice on the monk, but at the bare minimum, freezing a giant group of enemies and then just, shattering all of them with like a falling thunder is gonna be one of the most satisfying things to do. And also the fact that you can freeze bosses in Path of Exile too, it has insane utility. All right, so the next thing that makes the monk look so cool is both of his Ascendancies. They give us a pretty simple choice between Prince Zuko or Avatar Aang. The Prince Zuko Ascendancy, otherwise known as the Acolyte of Chayula, turns your spirit into darkness, and it allows you to take advantage of this darkness to gain damage or other unknown effects that may not have been revealed yet. Now, the main thing in the Ascendancy, which is cool, is the instant mana leech and also applying mana leech to energy shield. And this looks really cool because it's a ton of mana gain fast and it's going into your energy shield. This is probably gonna have combos with different skills, and it is probably gonna just make you a more tanky character. With that being said though, once they reveal all of the skills, I'm pretty sure there's gonna be some pretty cool stuff to do with darkness. Now, it sucks we are locked into Ascendancies once we pick them, so, I'm gonna just have to level 2 monk characters. But here's the thing, even though the Prince Zuko Ascendancy does look really cool, I'm locking into Avatar Aang, picking the Invoker class. Now, the Invoker gives you elemental damage as well as bonus effects when you trigger damage over time or critical hits. They have I Am the Blizzard and I Am the Thunder, giving you 10% bonus damage of either of ice or lightning. But this skill right here, Scatter Them to the Winds, which was described as when you trigger melee hits, you get elemental waves shot out of your quarterstaff or unarmed skills. Now, I'm just playing the background footage when Jonathan Rogers was describing this, and I'm pretty sure it's just these projectiles because this is the footage they chose when he was talking about it. Now, this skill actually looks really cool in combination with this quarterstaff attack called Staggering Palm. Dash to an enemy and strike them with an unarmed attack. heavy stunning an enemy grants you a buff that causes your quarterstaff and unarmed attacks to also fire projectiles for a short duration. So what I was thinking was that using both of these at the same time can get us double projectiles when we use our attacks. All right, but let's take this a step further. Let's combine this with one of our combo moves I showed earlier, Mantra of Destruction. You could get 10 combo and then use Staggering Palm with a guaranteed critical hit, triggering Scatter to the Winds, and then on top of that, more damage with the Staggering Palm will probably help you heavy stun enemies better, because we don't know how stun buildup works. I don't think they ever talked about that. But if it works like damage over time works, how damage over time works is you give them a bigger damage over time with the more damage you deal. So I'm guessing the more damage you deal, the more stun buildup you get as well. But of course, we'll figure that out. And essentially, Mantra of Destruction can not only help Staggering Palm get those heavy stuns, but it also auto-triggers our Ascendancy ability. Now, another quarterstaff move we have is called Charged Staff. You can consume all your power charges to infuse your quarterstaff with electricity for a duration, adding lightning damage and a lightning shockwave to your quarterstaff attacks. Now, not only will this give us a major bonus of shock damage, this will also apply to our double projectiles. And on top of that, the more power charges we consume, the bigger bonus of damage we get. And I believe the more duration we will get with our charged staff. And you can start to see how the monk might have some pretty cool combos once we play Path of Exile 2 in a few days. Now, the last skill I'm looking at is Meditate. This skill allows you to meditate and double your energy shield. Now, the only reason I'm looking at this skill is because at some point I'm going to respec all of my skills and all of my gear just to get the biggest energy shield I possibly can in this game, and I will do this for absolutely no reason other than to have the biggest energy shield.